the awards, unless you'd like me to open the meeting for the day, but I don't seem to have a gavel, so.
I wonder where your gavel is.
We found it.
Okay.
Got it. All right. All right. Good morning.
You ask
With
and
that,
you shall receive.
yes, it's June 11th, 2019, and with that, I'll open the State Land Board meeting. So.
Thank you, Governor. And I believe we are here to present some land board awards today. So we will hear from you and the other two land board members.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are very pleased to be honoring the recipients of the 15th Annual State Land Board Awards. The awards recognize responsible, sustainable stewardship of Oregon's natural resources. And since 2004, the Land Board has given 33 awards to people and organizations across the state for their extraordinary effort, vision, and dedication to Oregon. Award winners have come from geographic regions from all over, from Northeast Oregon to the Central Coast, large cities to rural communities, and the Willamette Valley to Southern Oregon. Awards have gone to watershed councils, private landowners, a port, small nonprofits, government agencies, large environmental organizations, and law enforcement groups. Honored projects have been supported by an array of partnerships and funding sources. Like last year, this year's awards feature artwork by Northwest Glass artist Ann Kavanaugh, and we hope our award recipients enjoy their beauty as much as we do. I really want to thank everyone for joining us today and for traveling all the way to Salem to be part of the awards ceremony. For the recognition, State Treasurer Reed and Secretary Clarno will each present an award, and then we'll take photos of each group after their award is presented. So with that, Treasurer Reed, come on up.
Thank you, Governor. I am pleased to present the 2018 Wetland Award to Cavender Wetland Enhancement. And I'm also pleased to give you a rather technical description of the project, which protects 9.7 acres of wetland habitat in Monument, which of course is in Grant County. The restoration lowered the levee that separated the wetland from the river to the 2-year ordinary high water level and increased floodplain connectivity. Constructed side channels within the wetland to mimic oxbow-like conditions, placed large wood structures for habitat complexity and cover, installed bioengineered stream bank protection against further bank erosion, continues to control invasive plant species, and it planted native vegetation appropriate to wetland zones. The review committee noted the creative design, innovative use of materials, and the use of native and existing resources, and the high visibility of a project in an area of the state where wetland enhancement is rare. This is a project that's an excellent concept to restore a natural flow and overflow regime. Also, a juniper root wad fence was constructed along the portion of the lowered levee by burying root wad trees at angles so that only the top quarter to top third of the log was left sticking from the ground. The purpose of that juniper root wad fence is to exclude trespassing cattle from entering the wetland from the riverside of the project and to attenuate flows during flood events. Additionally, a new section of 4-strand barbed wire fence was constructed along the west and northwest edge of the wetland that previously had no exclusion fencing. The Aquatic Resource Coordinator noted that the extreme weather conditions that affected the project and native vegetation struggled. Invasive species control has also been an issue, but project organizers have practiced adaptive management to address those issues. A coordinated, proactive response to ensure the ongoing success of the project is anticipated. This is the kind of forward-thinking, creative effort we've come to expect from our partners, and I'm extremely pleased to recognize Cavender Wetland Enhancement as our 2018 Wetland Award winner. I'm happy to introduce Secretary Clarno to present the second award this morning. Thanks.
Thank you, Treasurer Reed. I'm happy to present this award this morning. The Partnership Award is given to an organization for outstanding service that contributes to the Department of State Land's mission and day-to-day work. This year's Partnership Award goes to the Oregon Fishermen's Cable Committee, Incorporated. The OFCC has worked cooperatively with the Oregon Department of State Lands and multiple submarine cable system owners for the development and landing of West Coast, Alaska, and Trans-Pacific submarine cable systems on the Oregon coast. These installations have been done in a way that minimizes negative impacts to the existing stakeholders of Oregon's territorial sea, such as trawler fishermen, while providing great benefits to the state of Oregon. The innovative model of fishermen and a subsea cable development, creating a committee to work through issues together with a common goal of minimizing impacts on the other, was unheard of and somewhat controversial among subsea cable owners 20 years ago. This partnership with DSL, OFCC, and the cable companies has contributed to a huge increase in the number of undersea cables landing in Oregon, which has many ancillary benefits. A much more robust internet backbone in Oregon, the development of data centers and cloud storage farms in Oregon, and better connectivity for tech companies. The OFCC provides cable route data to the fishermen and educates them at yearly port meetings on safe procedures for operating near cables. Fishermen have hotline numbers they can call if they think they might be hung up near a cable. There have been no hotline calls since 2011, evidence that communication and training efforts have resulted in a well-educated fleet of trawl vessel owners and operators. Cable owners have been rewarded with a perfect record of cable security. The Oregon model of cooperation among stakeholders has been held up as an extreme example globally, not just for marine spatial management, but in the other industries as well. We commend these collaborations, successful outreach, and education efforts. Thank you.
Pull up Cavender, come on up. Can we get a round of applause from the audience? back to the regular order of business, and our guests are welcome to leave or stay as they schedules allow. I want to move to the consent item and would look for a motion on the approval of minutes for the April 9th meeting.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the minutes of the April 9th State Land Board meeting.
Second.
Second, I hear a second from Secretary Clarno. Hearing and seeing no objection, motion approved. Director Walker.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, Land Board. It's always a pleasure to have our Land Board Awards. And the artistry of Ann Kavanaugh is just incredible. We have agenda item 2 in front of you today. This has been on our agenda previously. This is a request for final approval to sell surface and subsurface mineral and geothermal rights of the Bear Creek property, which is a 158.2-acre parcel located at Township 1 South, Range 42 East, Section 16, Tax Lot 1101 in beautiful Wallowa County, in a direct sale to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation on behalf of the U.S. Forest Service. The authorities are listed below, and I have a couple of folks here today. There's 2 corrections as I get through this, and they're here to speak to those if we need to. But let me give you the history, since Secretary Clarno was not here previously when we heard this. On June 1, 2007, that was quite some time ago, the Land Board approved initial due diligence of the Bear Creek tract, along with 23 other isolated tracts in Baker, Union, Umatilla, and Wallowa counties. Some of those tracts were sold at auction, but this particular one was an in-holding. And you can see on Appendix A just exactly where this piece of ground is. And it's right in the middle of the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest, and it's sort of all by itself. So we couldn't come to any agreement with the Forest Service to find an equivalent exchange, so we sort of just sat on it for a while. Unfortunately, in 2009, we had a forest fire, and it burned the majority of the property because that area management plan was to allow a burn to continue. In the event of a wildfire, 21 acres had understory damage and 62 acres received damage between 50 and 100%. So in 2011, the department filed a claim against the Forest Service for the value of the timber. That claim was denied, and I do not know why the department did not appeal, but we did not. In May of 2017, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation submitted an application to purchase the surface land on behalf of the Forest Service. The next sentence in that paragraph says the Forest Service, according to their rules, cannot acquire property except from a nonprofit organization. And there is a representative here from the Forest Service, Laura Livingston, who says that that was only true in one particular case. In this case, they could, but it facilitates the faster transfer of money when it's done through a nonprofit, because we know the federal government. I used to work for them, and they move rather slowly. So, and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has been very involved in this particular purchase and is ready to write the check once you give the okay. The Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries report showed little or no value to the estate for the mineral rights, and you'll see there was my little notation there. Was there any value here? That forgot to be removed from this before it was published, but I had asked that question and my staff responded there was no value. On June 12, 2018, the Land Board again approved due diligence for the sale of the tract, and that's in Appendix C. The Forest Service provided input and coordination on the appraisal. A cultural resources review was done, and a survey was undertaken. And because the tract is steep, forest land with limited access and little potential for generating revenue, the department believes this is an appropriate sale. We received 10 comments regarding the sale. 4 expressed interest in purchasing the property but did not come forward with any proposal, and 6 comments supported the land staying in public hands. And because it's an in-holding, because it's surrounded by forest and it's 600 feet from a Forest Service campground and trailhead, we believe it's appropriate to transfer the the property. One correction that they noted was in Appendix B, the land evaluation form, item 32. It says access is very difficult. That's true. 6 aerial miles to highway. That's true. But must take 15 miles, not 50. It's 15 miles that feels like 50, according to Bill Richardson and Laura Livingston. So that is a correction. I think my staff just probably heard that wrong. So at this point, the department recommends that the State Land Board authorize the direct sale of the Bear Creek property, including the subsurface minerals and geothermal rights, of a 158.2-acre parcel in Wallowa County at Township 1S, Range 42E, Section 16, Tax Lot 110, and yet I see earlier it's 1101, so I'm not sure where we're at there, to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation on behalf of the U.S. Forest Service for $105,000.
All right, discussion?
Madam Chair, do we want to make sure we have that right before we?
It is Tax Lot 1101. I checked at the,
Assume the one was dropped.
yeah.
Okay. Madam Chair, I'd move approval of the recommendation.
The treasurer moves approval to sell surface and subsurface mineral and geothermal rights of the Bear Creek property in Wallowa County. Any further discussion?
I'll second the motion by the treasurer.
Secretary Clarno seconds the motion. Hearing and seeing no objection, the motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 3. Okay. You have seen item 3 before. This is a request for approval of a term easement for a fiber optic cable in Township 4 South, Range 11 West, and Section 1 DD in Tillamook County. I had to ask my staff today what DD meant, and it's when you separate into quarters. The quarters are A, B, C, D, and so there's 2 Ds, 2 quarters. There's a quarter within a quarter. So that's what the DD means. It doesn't stand for anything other than that. Some surveyor made up that. So I don't have a history lesson for you on that today. You got your history lesson from the Fisherman's Cable today. So the issue is whether you all, the land board, should approve a request from Edge Holding USA, LLC, otherwise known as Edge Cable, otherwise known as Facebook, for a 20-year easement to maintain the fiber optic cable crossing the territorial sea. The authorities are listed below. Now, there's a lot of explanation, and I'll try to get through it without reading all of it. But this one has generated quite a bit of controversy. On November 5th, 2018, Edge Cable submitted their application for an easement for a fiber optic cable crossing the territorial sea to the Department of State Lands. And you can see in Appendix A where that cable is proposed to go. Pursuant to Oregon administrative rules, a non-refundable application fee of $5,000 was submitted. And as permitted in another section of Oregon administrative rule, the department required the applicant to obtain a surety bond in the amount of $20,000 to ensure they will perform in accordance with all terms and conditions of the easement. The easement template includes the following, quote, future imposition clause. And this is a little bit of a history lesson as well, because I didn't know about this aspect of what we do. So as companies, this easement is granted with the express understanding and provision that it may be subject to the future imposition by grantor, us, of a consideration payment, if not already subject to one under current law, and or usage fee to be established by the Oregon State Land Board as authorized by law. So essentially, the companies want to avoid an unknown future fee that the legislature may impose on them. Right now, there is no fee to have an easement out to the territorial sea. But companies are willing to pay a fee to remove the clause that if the state would waive its right to impose such a fee in the future, at least for the term of the contract. That gives them some surety that they're not going to have to come up with some money later on down the road. So they'd rather pay us some money now and be done with it. This allowed them the assurance, and therefore the department agreed to that. And we did that some time ago and agreed on an amount of $300,000 as a one-time payment. I wanted to know where the $300,000 came from. Like, why wasn't it $200,000? But I asked our esteemed attorney to look into the matter, and it was just a number that people settled on at some point in time. Matt, do I have anything different to add to that? No, Madam Chair, nothing. Okay, so I'm correct. So $300,000. The project proposes to install an ultra-high-speed fiber optic cable system, and this cable system aims to provide a large capacity direct link between the United States and Asia. Installation of the cable landing in Tierra del Mar will be achieved via a horizontal directional drilling bore pipe. The undersea cable will cross the territorial sea and will be trenched where possible. And the proposed route was coordinated with the assistance of the Oregon Fishermen's Cable Committee, and you heard about them today and their history. And they have had a tremendous history of working with folks who put cables out there. And in fact, I was told this morning that there has never been a cable broken as a result of their work in collaborating and coordinating with those who place cables. So this site was chosen for its potential to achieve cable burial, avoid large rock outcrops, both of which are a desired result when installing a submarine cable. And you will see the agreement attached as Exhibit B. In Appendix B is our lease agreement, and also is the agreement between the Oregon Fishermen's Cable Committee and Facebook. And this project is called the Jupiter Cable System. We recently approved the removal fill permit that is required to dig the trench. And ODFW established a recommended in-water work period to avoid conflicts with marine mammals. So we've done all that we can to ensure that this will be installed properly. The project originally had asked for 2 trenches, but Oregon Parks and Recreation Department authorized only 1 because they felt that there was no justification showing for 2 trenches at this time. So therefore, we only had 1 removal fill permit, and we authorized 1 trench. The project also requires an ocean shores permit. That's the one I just spoke about with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, a 404 discharge permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, and of course our removal fill permit. All of those have been issued. In addition, a conditional use and development permit is pending in Tillamook County. I believe there's some appeal that's taking place on the OPRD permit, but thus far I know nothing more than that. Public involvement has been pretty substantial in this case. As you know, we are required under administrative rule to circulate the application to various local, state, and federal agencies, as well as other interested persons for review and public comment. We originally opened the public review process, also known as PRP, on November 27, 2018, and circulated the application. We discovered that the applicant had not given us all of the PRPs in the area, so we asked the applicant to provide us with a new list, and we recirculated the application for an additional 21 days, beginning February 1. On February 5, you all here at the Land Board heard from a number of residents from Tierra del Mar who are concerned about this pipe and this cable. Not a pipe, but a cable. Community residents were invited to come to a public meeting that the Department of State Lands held in Pacific City. After we had our meeting here, it was clear that we needed to have a public meeting. So we had a public meeting. I requested that the applicant send representatives to that public meeting. I was not present. I was in Washington, D.C. My granddaughter had just been born, but my staff was there. Several questions were asked, and the audience was allowed to participate in the comment period. There were 6 written comments that were submitted at the public hearing. The comments mostly focused on the possible environmental effects to threatened and endangered species that utilize the territorial sea, physical and geological impacts to community members' homes, safety measures and contingency plans necessary for the work, the public need for this process, for the project, and any effects the cable would have on the reef system. All those public comments came through the department and were passed on to Edge Cable. Edge Cable provided responses to the department. We reviewed them, and we believe that all of those things have been addressed, and some of those issues are outside the scope of the regulatory review of the department. Some of the concerns were noise, vibration, dust, traffic during construction. Those are issues for the county, and that application is still pending with the county. So the department feels that we have met all of our obligations, that we've reviewed this very carefully. Because Oregon Parks and Recs limited to 1 trench, we feel that we are being responsive. So our recommendation is pursuant to OAR, Oregon Administrative Rules, 141-083-0810, paren 9. Approval of an easement by the State Land Board shall be conditional and not valid until the applicant has received all other authorizations required by the department and other applicable local, state, and federal governing bodies for the placement of the cable in the territorial sea. As stated in OAR 141-083-0810, the placement of fiber optic and other cables on state-owned land within the territorial sea is recognized by the department as a conditionally allowable use of that land. The proposed cable route protects public trust values of commerce, navigation, fisheries, and recreation by 1, sufficiently burying the cable in state waters, 2, minimizing conflicts with other ocean users and industries, and 3, avoids, when possible, rocky substrates that would prevent burial of the cable. The department recommends that the State Land Board approve the term easement to Edge Cable Holding, USA LLC, application number 61603EA, to maintain and operate a fiber optic cable on, over, under, or across the territorial sea. And I don't know if anyone has signed up to testify today. Okay.
Questions for Director Walker? Questions? Just one. From what I've heard and talking to residents as well as read, my understanding is one of the major concerns that residents have is that this is a residential area. Could you talk about the time frame that it will take to install the cable?
Yes, Governor. The time frame, my understanding, is about 35 days to do the construction, and it will need to be done around the guidelines established by Fish and Wildlife. I have suggested that perhaps the contractors would wish to rent some of these vacation rentals while they are constructing it. Because that is some of the concern that was expressed by some of the homeowners, that these are vacation rentals for them and that impacts their vacation rental season.
And when the construction is done, could you describe just generally what the site might look like?
Yes, Governor, and members of the Land Board. The site will be restored to a grassy area that the public can participate in. They can walk their dogs, they can walk across. It will be restored because the vault that houses all of their electrical stuff is underground. So it will not be above ground, it will be underground, and it will just be restored to the land that it was before it was dug up.
Thank you. We have Scott McMullen signed up to testify. Come on up, please.
Scott McMullen, 864 Irving, Astoria, Oregon. Members of the land board, I just wanted to say we worked with Facebook starting in February a year and a half ago, and they were quite cooperative with the fishing industry. We asked them to have a boat go out and review the route. We started with a collaboration of some Newport, Oregon fishermen that fished that area of the coast, and we asked them to review the route. When they found a route that they thought would work, we sent a boat out to survey and do some kind of reconnaissance run on it. Again, it looked good, and then it went to the survey company for a real commercial grade survey. But it looks like it's a great route offshore and will not impact the fishing industry and just will work for cooperative fishing and cable burial at the same time. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. McMullen? Don't see any questions? Thank you very much. I think I'm looking for a motion on action item number 3.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to move the approval of the recommendation. I would like to make a comment when we get to that point as well.
Second the recommendation, and I'd also would like to make a comment.
Okay, all right, go ahead and.
So the reason I'm comfortable making the motion, or at least willing to, Madam Chair and Secretary Clarno, is the language that the director mentioned about its conditionality and the fact that it would not be valid until, I'm reading, the applicant has received all other authorizations required by the department and other applicable bodies. I think that's a really important point, and it's consistent with what we've heard from people who live in that area. So going forward, I'm hopeful that that Facebook and EDGE are going to take those concerns really seriously and engage closely with the community. I think that could involve changing the timeline and making sure that they're doing everything they can to accommodate the impact that inevitably will be part of that construction. I'm also really struck by what's likely to happen when it's complete, but that doesn't eliminate the disruption in the meantime. So I think we all ought to try to hold them to that and check in as that process continues.
Thank you. Secretary Clarno.
Thank you. Even though I wasn't here for the public hearing and understanding all of the concerns, I would just say that I hope it's of some comfort to those people that are concerned about Facebook. Facebook in Central Oregon has been a wonderful partner for our community of Prineville. They provided our school there with a lot of technical equipment, and they have done an excellent job of making sure our community's happy with everything they've done, and I hope the same thing will happen in this project. Thank you.
Great, and I agree with both of those comments. And Treasurer Reed has made a motion subject to conditional approval and hearing, and we have a second, and hearing and seeing no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you. We will move to item 4. I believe that's where we're at. Okay. Well, unfortunately, I believe that this is going to become a pretty frequent issue. Item 4, the department is requesting approval to initiate permanent rulemaking to impose restrictions on the public recreational use of state-owned land in Multnomah County between River Mile 9 and River Mile 10 within the city of Portland on state-owned easterly banks of the Willamette River. The authorities are listed below. Last land board meeting, you heard from me about the same issue in Lane County. It's becoming a problem across the state, and globally we're going to have to address this at some point because we're doing it piece by piece by piece, and it's becoming a problem, and it's becoming very expensive to the agency. So what we have going on is, in this particular case, the Port of Portland and Daimler Trucks North America, and I did check on the pronunciation, and in Germany it would be Daimler. Some people say Daimler, but I learned it as Daimler today. So there's another history lesson. Yay. They currently manage a stretch of upland property adjacent to the east bank of the Willamette River in Portland. Camping is not allowed on port property, but attempts to keep unauthorized camps off the port's property adjacent to the river are complicated by the indistinct property boundary that they share with the state of Oregon. At this location, the state owns the bed and banks of the Willamette River up to the line of ordinary high water, and that's you'll see that in Appendix A. Since 2018, the department and the port regularly receive calls in the area from Daimler and the public, highlighting the accumulation of garbage and human waste in the area, safety concerns, and the diminished ability for the public to access and recreate on the river. And that's a particular concern because that is one of our charges here, is to allow the river to be available and accessible to everyone. The port regularly removes camps and debris from their own property, but they're unable to pursue enforcement on the banks and beaches where that line of ordinary high water is because they cannot discern whose property it is. So the department and the port have documented illegal or nuisance activity on state-owned land at Swan Island. These activities are offensive littering and dumping, reckless burning, and open fires, which are a terrific hazard right now. I'm just almost speechless about it because this is going to be a very hot year again, and we're going to have more wildfires. It also damages riparian vegetation and wildlife habitat, interferes and damages property, and of course diminishes public safety and recreational opportunities. There is photo documentation in Appendix B for you today in your book. Some of the illegal activities occur at night and are difficult for the department and law enforcement to monitor. And of course, the repeated accumulation of garbage and human waste is a concern to wildlife habitat and water quality. On May 7th of this year, the department received a formal request from the port to enact restrictions on public use of the beaches to address these issues. That is in Appendix C. I do have two representatives of the port here and a representative from Daimler if you wish to hear from them, because I actually think it would be nice for you to not just see the pictures, but to understand the breadth of this problem. In response, the department will be engaging in emergency closure of the site, which we can do. We are working on an intergovernmental agreement with Metro to clean up the camps because the process for us is complicated through the unclaimed property provisions. Our esteemed attorney brought all those complicated matters to our attention. So we're trying to work with Metro on a contract. There are all kinds of rules about what you can dispose of and what you have to keep for 30 days for people to come and retrieve. And Metro has a very good process in place. Here internally at the department, we are developing a policy, however, and if we are not able to reach an agreement with Metro, we have reached out to another independent contractor to help us with that. Part of our policy, of course, is to direct folks to services and community-based organizations, so we're not just going out in the dead of night and guns a-blazing and cleaning things up. We are alerting people to the problem that this is creating and giving them solutions and places to go. We are also asking you, what I'm asking from you today as the department, is that we would like to engage in permanent rulemaking, just like we did with the Lane County issue in Eugene. We'd like to have them going on the same track in different locations, of course, but we're already underway. If you approve this today, we have the same contractor in place to facilitate the rulemaking. So you can see the same restrictions there that we've established. I don't want to read all that today. It's in the record. The department recommends the land board authorize the department to initiate permanent rulemaking to impose restrictions on the public recreational use of state-owned banks on the Willamette River at Swan Island, and that would be between River Mile 9 and River Mile 10.
Thank you, Director Walker. I'm looking forward to hearing from my other land board members, but colleagues, I support this proposal. I am gravely concerned about what's happening in our recreational sites along the rivers in Oregon, and I am hopeful with the voters' passage of ballot measure 102 in November of 2018, which was a $600 million bond initiative for affordable housing, and the work we are doing in the legislature, that will relieve some of the crises we are seeing around housing in the state. My concern is those efforts are a mere drop in the bucket of what we're seeing, frankly, in every single community around the state. So I support taking these actions. I'd love to hear from my colleagues and looking for a motion. So.
Madam Chair, I'd move approval of the recommendation and agree with what you said.
Did you, excuse me, did you wish to hear from any of the parties today?
I don't need to.
I don't either.
Okay.
No, I think. But I appreciate them being here, and certainly I'd like an opportunity to grill my former legislative director who's here with the Port of Portland. So I'll pass on this opportunity this morning. So
Sure?
I'm sure. Thank you, Secretary Clarno.
That might be fun. I'll second the motion.
All right. The motion is for the staff to initiate rulemaking to impose restrictions on the public recreational use of state-owned land in Multnomah County. We've got a motion and a second with Secretary Clarno, and hearing and seeing no objection, the motion shall be approved. We appreciate the attendance of Port and folks that are here very much distressed by the impact that's happening on Oregon's waterways. So thank you. Motion approved.
Thank you, Governor, and we will begin the emergency closure process. I just don't know. We'll have to get signs made and do some things before we do that, but we'll do that rather quickly while we're going through the other process. All right, we will move on to agenda item 5, which seems to be another one of our controversial measures today before you. This is a request for reapproval, and I'll have to tell you about that. So reapproval of the direct sale of 63.1 acres of subsurface minerals and geothermal rights located in Marion County. This is in Appendix A, which shows the location of what we're talking about here, and the authorities are cited below. So you've seen this before. On October 1, 2015, I'll take you back quite a ways, the department received an application from Silverton Rock Farm for the release of approximately 63.1 acres of subsurface mineral and geothermal rights held by the State Land Board below their surface ownership. The applicant had recently purchased the property along with adjacent parcels for the express purpose of developing a rock quarry. There actually was a rock quarry there before that ended in 1996. When they purchased the property, they thought they had purchased all the mineral rights. As I indicated in a previous land board meeting, we became aware, the department became aware upon reviewing land use action notices from Marion County, and we informed the landowner that, oh gosh, we own the subsurface mineral rights. So it was determined that the mineral ownership, the state's mineral ownership, was improperly dropped from the land title in the mid-1940s when the rock quarry was established. And that operation at that time was confined to a portion of the state-owned mineral rights and paid no royalties to the state because we didn't know that we owned it. The current landowner proposes to reopen that quarry and eventually expand onto the adjoining parcel where the state does not own mineral rights. The title company admitted error and settled with the landowner for an undisclosed amount. I have no idea what that amount was, but I'm sure it was appropriate for the circumstances. On October 11, 2016, the Land Board approved due diligence on the property for the potential sale of the subsurface minerals. The state obtained its own appraisal of the mineral interest, indicating a value of $50,000. So on April 6, 2018, the property owner agreed to purchase the minerals for that price, and on June 12, 2018, the Land Board approved the final sale of subsurface minerals. That's in Appendix B. Unfortunately, in the process of finalizing the documentation for release of these subsurface minerals, staff discovered that no public outreach had occurred. That will not happen here again. Therefore, in order to comply with the land and mineral sales process, public comments were sought in April and May of this year. The department received 78 comments over that time period. Many of the comments were related to operations of a quarry, noise, environmental impacts on nearby streams and reservoir, wildlife, and traffic. 2 comments suggested that this should be an open bid sale. 1 comment stated a negative aesthetic impact, and 2 comments were received related to devaluing nearby property home values. Several comments also referred to holding a public forum for further discussion of the gravel quarry operation and the impacts that would have on the local community. The department contacted Marion County to discuss whether they received public comments or held an open public forum. They did not hold a forum, but they received comments, and they said that most of those comments were similar to what the department has received. The county approved the mining operation request, and there was also, I will say, that the Warm Springs tribes, the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs, had an archaeological concern early on about the release of minerals, but our staff worked with them and that had been resolved. I will also state that there was some question about whether the site would harm the water, but Marion County determined that it was not going to harm the water nearby. So we believe we've done all that we can at this point. Our recommendation is that the majority of comments received were outside the scope of the action of selling the state's mineral right and more related to the local land use decision regarding a future gravel quarry mining operation. They've already received approval by the local jurisdiction, Marion County, so the department would again recommend the Land Board move forward with the mineral sale to Silverton Rock Farm for $50,000, located in Marion County at Township 7 South, Range 1 East, Section 7D, Tax Lot 400.
Thank you, Director Walker. Questions, comments? Treasurer Reed.
Madam Chair, thank you. I am concerned here. I just had an opportunity last night to review the comments, and I didn't read every word of every comment, but I was struck by 3 comments in particular, one from the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, and 2 from the city of Silverton, both of which raised concerns that, at least in my mind, are significant enough that I'd like to make a different motion when that's appropriate. I'm happy to postpone that if others have comments.
Okay. Secretary.
I guess I would just comment that I'm very concerned about the fact that if we don't mine gravel, we can't build roads. It's my understanding there was quite a bit of traffic jam coming down from Portland today. We need more roads. I don't want to stand in the way of that. I'd like to be sure that we have the appropriate process that needs to be taken, that as was taken here, and whether we should have public comment. But I do worry about us having the ability to have gravel. And I realize that comes along with surface mining.
Madam Chair, would not dispute the Secretary's comments at all. I'm particularly concerned about these 2 sources of comments, though, and the need to engage in government consultation with respect to the tribe, and at least take the city's comments seriously. With I feel no qualification to judge the merits of them, but I'm concerned that it doesn't appear that they necessarily got the feedback that they wanted. So I would not be comfortable.
You're not interested in moving forward at this time?
Indeed. And,
Okay.
And I would suggest we postpone and reopen the public comment period.
Director Walker, could you talk a little bit about your conversations with the Warm Springs tribe?
Governor, I did not personally have those conversations. Our cultural resources archaeological person, Gary Curtis, did. And the email I got this morning said that those issues were resolved with Warm Springs. So I'm uncertain which comment the treasurer is referring to, but they apparently have been resolved with Warm Springs. They were concerned about archaeological resources, and that has been resolved.
So, Director Walker, I guess I would just say for the record, I'm not interested in moving forward in terms of opening up for further public comment. I do think the treasurer's, I think it's appropriate if folks are willing to move along that we take a look at the city of Silverton's concerns, and if folks want to talk with Warm Springs tribes to assure ourselves that we have addressed those concerns, I'm fine to do that. I'm just not interested in opening it for further public comment periods. So I don't know if that would mean essentially a set over until August or December, our next meeting. I know that I'm assuming still there is the county land use process that needs to move forward as well on this particular project.
Yes, Governor, I believe the county has concluded their land use process, so we're just waiting for us. And we had communicated with the applicant back in April. We reached out to Mark Hoyt, Silverton Rock Farms attorney, to let him know the mineral sale was pulled from the land board agenda in April because of the noticing issue that we had. He said that was fine. We told him we would be moving forward at the June meeting, and he was appreciative that we were keeping him informed.
So I assume the city of Silverton raised their concerns during the county land use planning process.
I assume so. Those were in the 78 comments that we received. Deputy Ryan, I'm going to ask him to step forward. He might be able to add something else to that conversation.
For the record, my name is Bill Ryan. I'm Deputy Director here at State Lands. The comment from the city, actually they submitted the same comment twice. It basically said that they wanted to be included as a party of record in any future decisions that occur relative to mining operations or quarrying at that location. And by the fact of them actually commenting on the public notice process, they actually are a party of record, and they are on our distribution list for when we do actions out there.
Thank you. Other questions for Deputy Director Ryan?
I can tell you, Governor and members of the Land Board, that our staff reviewed all 78 comments carefully, and we believed that all issues had been addressed. But if any member of the Land Board thinks that we need to engage in further conversation, we're happy to do that.
So I think I would ask for the record how providing more time would allow the agency to address the issues raised by the city of Silverton and the Warm Springs tribes. And what you're telling us, at least I hear in terms of Warm Springs, that we have addressed the concerns that they have raised. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is what I've received from my staff this morning.
What about the city of Silverton?
Mr. Ryan just explained that issue, that they wanted to be a party of record, and they submitted their comment twice. I have not reviewed the comments. I asked my staff to provide those because the treasurer had wanted to see them. As you know, I had a death in my family over the weekend, so I was not able to get those comments out to the Land Board until yesterday. after my staff assembled those. So I sent them out, but I personally have not reviewed those comments, but I know that my staff reviewed all 78 comments.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess so that land board assistants can have a conversation and we can figure out a path forward here.
All right.
Today's meeting. So with that, we're in recess for 5 minutes. regarding item number 5, I believe. And just wanted to get a sense of where folks were at. I think one of the concerns is the materials came late and folks didn't have an opportunity to review them. And so we want to make sure that literally every stone has been turned over as, sorry to use the
Stone in
pun.
every
It's,
rock.
it was a long night last night. But that, we have really examined all of these issues and had an opportunity to vet them thoroughly. So, Treasurer Reed, do you want to make any further comments?
I think I'd wait until there's another motion to do so.
Okay, all right. Secretary Clarno, any comments?
No, I'll wait.
All right. So the chair would make a motion that we would move forward on item number 5, that we would request, approve the staff request for reapproval of the direct sale of 63.1 acres of subsurface minerals and geothermal rights located in Marion County. And I'm doing this with the information that I have in front of me that leads me to believe that the city of Silverton has is named an interested party of record for any future proposed applications, permits, or land use associations, applications associated with mining or quarry operations associated with the identified mineral parcel, and with the director's assurance that the concerns of the Warm Springs tribes have been addressed via staff in this process. So, other comments, concerns?
Maybe we should get a second.
I would second the motion.
Secretary Clarno seconds the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think sometimes the word consensus is misused. It doesn't mean unanimity. It means that we've achieved a place where people who aren't in agreement can live with it, stand aside. That's probably where I am. So I'm willing to support the motion. I appreciate what you said, Governor, in terms of your understanding. I'm frustrated about not having had a chance to review the comments until last night. I think the comments that the city made do indeed ask to be an interested party of record, and I appreciate that. They make some substantive concerns as well. We haven't had a chance to understand those. And while I don't have any reason to suspect that the description of the tribe's satisfaction is not right, it would sure be nice to hear from them directly as well. So I hope this can be a learning experience for all of us when these things go forward. We'll have a little more chance to review them and hear directly from the folks that have expressed their concerns.
Absolutely agreed that it's critically important that we have an opportunity to review documents and be able to talk to parties to make sure that we have full information before making these decisions. That being said, I have Secretary Clarno as a yes, I'm a yes, and I just need to know you're going to be a yes as well. Okay, thank you. With that, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Governor, and members of the Land Board. I apologize you did not get those comments. During the recess, I spoke with my staff about how we can improve that process, and it means that we're going to have to work very hard on our scheduling. Treasurer, you and I did not meet until Friday before Land Board, which made it difficult for me to address your questions in a speedy manner. And then also perhaps the Land Board assistant meeting, we do that 3 weeks before we have the individual meetings. Maybe we need to have that sooner. But I can tell you that we'll talk about that internally and see how we can improve the process so that I can have the time to get the input and the questions from you all and get those answered in a time appropriate before you come here today. So I'll take that on and own that today.
Thank you.
All right, we will move to section 6, item 6, which is my sort of catch-all category for what we want to bring you up to date on. I did indicate in my meetings with you what I'd be talking about today. The first item is an Elliott State Research Forest update. I wanted to give you an update on the public ownership project. And I have, today, my staff graciously put together a three-ring binder for Secretary Clarno about the Elliott State Forest to bring her up to speed on all of the actions that the Land Board has taken in the last few years while she has not been a party to the Land Board. And we have offered to assist her and her staff in engaging in further conversations to learn more. So I do want to tell you that we have convened the Diverse and Engaged Advisory Committee. We've had meetings so far, 3 meetings, I believe. And it just seems we have meetings about Elliott all the time because we have internal meetings, we have meetings with the federal agencies over the HCP, and then we have our advisory committee meeting. We meet on a monthly basis for the advisory committee, and DSL, the Department of State Lands, and Oregon State University attends those as well. We're talking about the values and priorities that Oregonians hold dear when it comes to the Elliott and the charge that you all gave to us back in December of 2018. The next advisory committee is going to be held in my hometown of Reedsport later this month, so we're very excited. I think we may end up being somewhere in Winchester Bay at the Marine Center, but we will be close to Reedsport. The habitat conservation plan conversations continue. As I said, we have regular meetings on those with our HCP consultant, with OSU and the agencies. And recently, we took a trip, Deputy Ryan and I took a trip to Portland to meet specifically with National Marine Fisheries Service, who had some extra concerns, so we allayed those, and I believe we're all back on track. Our next Habitat Conservation Plan meeting is this week on the 13th to continue the technical work in our conservation strategies, and we anticipate taking specific shape on that issue over the next month. We are moving rapidly but thoroughly here because we are coming to you in December with a proposal. Oregon State University has been an excellent partner at the table. They joined us for our first public engagement event here in Salem. We had an evening event here to talk to the public about what we're doing. OSU is also having a series of listening sessions on the South Coast. They did that last week. I believe North Bend, Reedsport, and Douglas County. So they are moving along with us as excellent partners. So we'll have more to update you on that at the next Land Board meeting. And Secretary Clarno, please reach out to us as you go through the notebook if you have questions.
Thank you.
My next update is a status of 3 of our land sale transactions, because I know you're curious about what's going on there. We have, of course, the South Redmond tract, and we're very involved in that process with the annexation and moving forward. But 3 have suddenly come to the fore, and we are working on those. The Milliken Road property out near Prineville, we consulted with a local brokerage firm on the methodology of sale. We received a recommendation on May 28th that a commercial brokerage process should be used for this sale. So we're working with the Department of Administrative Services now on getting that contract set forth with a real estate brokerage firm. The appraisal that we had done on that property was done in August of 2018, so it's still a good appraisal at this point. And so we expect to outline the sale process and the time frame, and I'll be calling Judge Crawford soon, hopefully this week, though I will be out sometime for some family time, but I will let him know soon that we're going to go ahead with a broker. The Helvetia office building in Hillsborough, which is always an item of interest for Treasurer Reed. We have consulted with a brokerage firm on that and received word back on May 29th on the methodology of sale. We're actually waiting for their recommendation on the methodology. The appraisal on that was also completed in August of 2018, and that is still good. That property is leased and making money at the moment, but we are aware that the land board would like us to sell it, and we want to sell it at a good price. And so I think we will. The market is very good in that area right now. And then the third property that we have of interest is our Stevens Road property in Bend. We received the draft appraisal on that last week. A whopping 456 pages. So staff is busy reading that and reviewing it, punching the numbers. I just want to remind you what we had asked the appraiser to do. We initially were going to have them look at 4 scenarios. We ended up with 3. Scenario 1 would be the current value of the whole tract of land. The second would be a post-master plan annexation value of the whole tract. And then the third would be the potential value of DSL development and long-term ownership of the tract, which I think is probably the less desired outcome of the land board, but nonetheless, we had the appraiser look at that to give us that value. So I think by our next land board meeting, which I don't know, we may do one in August or October, we will have distilled the appraisal down to some understanding, because what we are doing now is looking at the numbers, we're working with the appraiser, going back and forth to solidify things and understand where we're at, and then we'll bring that back to you all for conversation. So I can move on to the next item, but you might have some questions about any of those. So before I do that.
Any questions?
Okay. The next item, I wanted to give you a legislative update, and I know that the League of Women Voters is anxiously awaiting to hear about some of these bills. So let me just give you an update on some of these bills. And as we near the end of session, it changes by the hour. So what I tell you now may be different 20 minutes from now. And these are bills that were of concern to the agency, that were our bills or of concern. So House Bill 2272, relating to addressing damage to state land and the waterway lease insurance policy proposal in response to abandoned and derelict vessels. Recent conversations have shown us that this continues to be a problem and escalating. It's important for us to coordinate with other natural resource agencies in Oregon's ports to have a statewide coordinated conversation about this issue. I know the department and the Oregon State Marine Board and Department of Environmental Quality gave a joint presentation on abandoned and derelict vessels to the House Ag and Land Use Committee, sharing our intent to continue coordination. The bill died in committee, but we're hoping that the committee takes this on as an interim work group plan, because it's costing us a lot of money. We are spending a lot of money, and it's a big problem that we just cannot address alone here at the department. House Bill 2273 related to abandoned securities, and 2274 relating to unpaid wages. Those were in our unclaimed property program. There were concerns with the Oregon Law Center and the Oregon trial lawyers and the governor's labor and workforce advisor. There were a lot of, one of your folks came in on that conversation. So they asked us to revisit that conversation next session. There apparently was a little bit of language that was causing some distress. So we'll work that through, but maybe that will not be our problem in the future. That may be the treasurer's problem if his bill passes.
I think that was the land board that introduced that bill.
Yes, the land board did introduce that bill. Mr. Treasurer, but the program looks to be cited in your agency. So we'll see. I'll give you an update on that in a few minutes. Our budget bill is likely to be third reading today or tomorrow, so that's moving forward. The next bill is Senate Bill 454 relating to administrating unclaimed property. We had no problems with that bill. We did a lot of homework, a tremendous amount of homework, both Treasury and the department. And it went to Ways and Means and sat in purgatory for a little while. Having served on Ways and Means, I know what that's like down there. It had unanimous votes out of the Senate Business and General Government Committees. And it has been suddenly arisen from the ashes, and it has been moved to the General Government Subcommittee, and it's scheduled for public hearing and work session tomorrow. So, Land Board, I may have something new to report to you soon. I know we've worked really hard on that. We have a memorandum of agreement that we're going to sign between the Treasury and us to address some of the concerns that we need to work on should this bill pass. Both our esteemed counsel and Treasury's counsel worked with us on that agreement. Our next set of bills were the wetland work group bills. There were 3 of those. House Bill 2436, 37, and 38. If House Bill 24, 36, and 38 move together, the cumulative impacts of streamlining the removal fill permitting process, that's what those 2 were addressing, and driving down the cost of mitigation, that will alleviate barriers to housing development in current urban growth boundaries. So we're really hopeful that those 2 bills move. I know, Governor, that has been an important thing for you to improve affordable housing throughout the state. We believe this aligns with your priorities and the legislative priorities, so we're hoping that moves. House Bill 2437 also is related to removal fill. That has made it through Ways and Means and the Natural Resources Sub, and it's now moved out of the full committee, and that's the Ag Drainage Ditches Bill. So that one is moving. House Bill 2796 relating to needed housing projects in wetlands. Degraded wetlands is not a designation in the state of Oregon. This bill conflicts with Oregon's net zero loss policy in regard to wetlands. The bill would take Oregon out of compliance with current federal standards, and this bill would also encourage the degrading of wetlands, resulting in long-term acceleration of wetland loss. The department submitted a letter outlining conflicts that would arise should this policy pass. It did move out of House Ag and Land Use, and it is waiting in Ways and Means, awaiting referral. So I have no idea where that bill will end up. House Bill 3132 relating to voluntary stream restoration. This one, the environmental restoration weirs have been a perennial conversation in the Capitol for several years. These are sort of the Beaver Dam bills, correct? House Bill 3132 is the latest attempt to address these man-made structures, specifically in eastern Oregon. The department feels strongly that sufficient data relating to the long-term impacts of, quote, check dams does not yet exist. Should the state choose to create this administration and regulatory program within the ODFW, DSL would advocate strongly for full funding for the appropriate studies to be administered to allow adaptive management and natural resources protections. We are pretty strongly concerned that without studies, we aren't going to know how these things work. That bill moved out of House Ag and Land Use and is in Ways and Means awaiting referral. House Bill 2020, which I know Mr. Minor has been working on a lot, relating to greenhouse gas emissions. I hear about that one a lot in our Natural Resources Committee. I don't know who submitted that bill, but it's one that we've been interested in. It's related to greenhouse gas emissions and establishes the Climate Policy Office and a cap-and-trade system for the state of Oregon. It has been a very exciting bill to watch this session. We weighed in on that a little bit to make sure that everything that we needed to do here was being taken care of in the bill, but our department is not in the bill as a named agency, so we've not had to be as deeply involved in that one. That bill moved out of the Joint Committee on Carbon Reduction on May 17th, and it's scheduled for a public hearing and work session in Ways and Means Natural Resources Sub.
Today.
Yay! On June 5th, so movement there. House Bill 2250, relating to the environment, requires Oregon Natural Resources agencies to ensure that state standards for protecting public health, environment, or natural resources are at or above standards and requirements contained in federal environmental laws. As in effect on January 19, 2017. We all know what day that was. Although we are currently not a named agency in the bill, should the department adopt partial or full assumption of the 404 permit, the department would then fall under the umbrella of House Bill 2250. We are hopeful for the future of 404 assumptions, so we have followed the successful progress of this governor's priority bill. That's where that bill came from. That bill was signed by the Speaker and the President on May 15th. I'm assuming, Governor, you will be signing that
We signed it.
shortly. There you go. All right, well, that does it for our legislative update. And the last.
Director Walker, can I
Yes.
ask a couple of questions
Yes.
about House Bills 2436, 2437, and 2438? I'd love to hear from you or Deputy Director Ryan about how these bills came to be. I understand there was a work group that was engaged. One of the bills has met with some concerns in the legislature, and I'd just love to see how they got put together and who was at that table.
I think Deputy Ryan is the perfect person to answer that because he was at most, if not all, of the work group meetings. I missed a few, but I was at many of them. So
Yes,
there you go.
Governor, members of the commission. There was a work group pulled together by Representative Clem. It was co-chaired by Representatives Brock Smith and McLean. And that group met monthly for several months last year, addressing all issues related to wetlands and the removal fill program and wetlands regulation by the Department of State Lands, looking at various issues. And so the bills that came out of that, 24, 36, 37, and 38, basically are addressing various components of the issues and challenges that were raised up. And so there were representatives from local governments and from environmental organizations, industry organizations. The Farm Bureau was there as well. So very, a broad group of folks, and there was a lot of time spent on information sharing, basically laying out how the program works, what we know about resources, what the challenges are, both from the perspective of the department and from natural resource agencies, as well as from the local governments. And then those bills came from that. And so partial assumption was one of the recommendations, basically to take the requirement that an entity developing, say for housing or for industrial development or what have you, currently needs to get a permit if they're going to be impacting wetlands or waterways, both from the Army Corps of Engineers and from the Department of State Lands. We have parallel regulatory processes. But the Federal Clean Water Act allows state agencies or other public entities to assume that regulatory authority from the Army Corps of Engineers. And so that would basically mean that you'd have one less hoop that you'd have to jump through in order to obtain an approval. And so that's a significant benefit for folks that are trying to provide housing or provide industrial development, particularly in the Willamette Valley, where we have lots of wetlands, and the areas that are zoned for development are currently encumbered by being wetlands and requiring compensatory mitigation, et cetera.
I think I would add to that, the 2436 has, there's an FTE request for 2 positions because the department cannot absorb that work. We are very slim staffed at this point, and I think that is one of the sticking points currently in Ways and Means is funding those 2 positions.
All right. Any other questions on the legislation? Okay.
Okay, then my final item on the agenda is at your desk, you have a book called Log It or Lose It. This was sent to us by Gordon Ross from Coos Bay. Mr. Ross is a former county commissioner in Coos County. He contacted the office and asked if I would read the pamphlet to the land board. It's too long to do so. So I've provided one for each of you at your desk. And if you have questions, you can contact Mr. Ross. But I did want him to know that I provided that to the land board at his request.
Thank you, Director Walker, and we really appreciate Mr. Ross's commitment to public service, his time spent serving the people of Oregon, and the information that he's provided us. Plus, for newer land board members, he has been in front of us multiple times in the last several years. So we appreciate him providing us with this information.
Thank you, Governor and members of the land board. That is all I had under other. I will let you know that I will be traveling to Coquille tomorrow to meet with the Coos County Commissioners to talk about potential land trade in the South Slough Reserve to provide for setback in Winchester Creek. We're having a little difficulty on that, so I thought a face-to-face meeting might be a good thing. And then I will be out of the office Thursday and Friday on bereavement leave. So I will be available to you after that.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Walker. Anything further to come before the land board? Seeing all heads nodding no, we are going to adjourn, and thank you all for being here. Appreciate the information and the ability to move through the agenda in a timely manner. We're adjourned.